Welcome to Legal Lines. My name is Tom O'Shea, the host of this program brought to you by the York County Bar Foundation. I'm honored this evening to have a guest, Judge Craig Trebilcock, Judge of the Court of Common Pleas of York County. Welcome, Judge.
Thanks, Tom, for having me.
And I want to point out that the topic today is Veterans Treatment Court. We'll talk about that in a minute, but first I want to let the audience know about Craig's military background. In addition to being a judge for the Court of Common Pleas of York County, Judge Trebilcock is still in the Army as in the reserves. He has 25 years of service with the Army. He is now a colonel in the United States Army Reserves at the present time. 6 years of active duty, I understand.
That's right.
19 years of Army Reserves.
Correct.
And twice deployed in that time.
Yes, I had two opportunities to excel, once in Bosnia and once in Iraq.
So Bosnia was back in the 90s?
Correct. Yeah.
Iraq?
2003. I was in the invasion.
In the invasion, the early year of Iraq?
Yes.
Yes,
yeah.
Okay. And so obviously we're talking about a subject that is very important to all of us, but particularly Judge Trebilcock, which is Veterans Treatment Court.
Right.
And Judge, I want you to tell everybody what Veterans Treatment Court is.
All right. The treatment court is a different approach to justice. With the usual defendant, they come into court. If they're convicted, they're given punishment, and we hope that rehabilitation flows from that. It might be jail time. If it's a more serious offense, they may go to state prison. With the treatment courts, what we've figured out is if you can get at the underlying root of why somebody is violating the law, you can keep them from doing it again and again and again. One reason why crime rates are so high, it's not everybody's out there committing crimes, it's that the same people are committing crimes over and over and over again, clogging our system. So with the Veterans Treatment Court, essentially what we're looking at is what caused this person who was an upstanding hero, had no problems with the law before they went to war, but now they came back and something has changed. They're getting into trouble, they're getting into fights, they may be doing substance abuse, and we try to figure out what that trigger is and get them treated for it so they can have a successful life.
Okay, now you mentioned treatment courts in general as you're talking about Veterans Treatment Court. Can you just give us an overview of what the treatment courts are? Sure.
In York County's been a leader in the entire state for some time. We have a drug treatment court, mental health treatment court, juvenile treatment courts, and a DUI treatment court. And in each one of those, the theme is that somebody either has a substance abuse problem or perhaps a mental health problem that's leading them into criminal conduct. In those programs, instead of just punishing them, we try to get them help. It could be counseling. It could be going through different programs. It can be weaning them off of the drugs that they're hooked on and then giving them the support and structure so they can be successful going forward.
Okay, and as you said, York County is one of the leading counties with the general treatment courts for drug or alcohol abuse. And I think the drug abuse is both at the adult level as well as the juvenile level.
That's correct. Yeah, Judge Thompson a few years ago started this. Judge Penny Blackwell's been leading it recently, and the results have been remarkable.
So we know that there's success with this program.
Yes.
If they did studies, I believe, as to what the recidivism rate is compared to the criminal defendants who go through the regular system.
Exactly. Really, people who go through the normal criminal justice system, the rate of repeat offenses is about 55%. They're back in front of the judge every 18 months, every 2 years. In these treatment court programs, nationwide, the Veterans Court programs have had a 95% success rate, only 5% violating. Drug treatment courts, for example, it's a little more around 10 or 11%, but it's a huge improvement by a scale of 30 to 40%.
Over regular defendants in regular criminal justice.
Right, where we just kind of throw them in jail and hope somehow they'll learn their lesson without more support. We're finding out increasingly that doesn't just work like that. We would like to think that we put them behind bars and we're tough on criminals and that's going to help society be better. With violent criminals, you got to put them away. But for a lot of people, they have mental health issues or substance abuse issues. If we can help them to get better, we help society to get better as well.
Now, I know that you were instrumental in York County having a veterans treatment court, and that was established approximately a year ago?
That's right, February 9th, 2012.
And why is it that there's a need for a veterans treatment court that's different than the other treatment courts?
Well, we've learned a couple of things from the experience of other veterans courts. One is that a lot of veterans will not open up to somebody who is not a veteran. They will not talk about their wartime experience, the trauma that they went through that is now causing them trouble back in civilian life. Second, the treatment modalities, how we get them better, are much different. They, instead of just seeing a civilian counselor, for example, they go to the Veterans Administration in Lebanon, who has a lot of experience on helping soldiers get over the trauma they experienced in combat. Some of these young heroes we're trying to help out have been wounded themselves, or maybe had a buddy die in their arms, been put in a position where they had to kill an enemy, and that has a tremendous attack on somebody's psyche. We're all kind of raised to not do violence, but then we train our soldiers to go do violence onto others. And our troops are great at carrying out their mission, but it comes with baggage when they come home.
Okay, so now let's say, let's look at the way the program works. If there's a veteran who has committed a crime, is he automatically, or he or she automatically entitled to be in the the Veterans Treatment Court?
No. The first thing we look for is there a connection between their military service and the trauma they experienced there and the bad acts they're doing now. If you're just the guy who robs banks, or you're a sex offender or something, you're not coming into treatment court. We don't take homicides or sex offenders anyway. But there are people who just go in the military who are bad people to begin with. Their misconduct is not related to their service. They're not coming in. What we're trying to do is find the people who are good, upstanding citizens, and because of the sacrifice they made for our country and the trauma they experienced, they've gotten off the straight and narrow. So they have to fill out some applications. We have a questionnaire to find out what is it about their background that's causing them to get into trouble now. That's reviewed by the probation department and the district attorney, and if they both think that the person will benefit from treatment, then they can come into the Veterans Court.
Okay, now I want to make it clear that the Veterans Treatment Court is only for criminal matters.
That's correct.
Okay, and so if someone who's a veteran is charged with a crime, they make an application through the probation office?
That's correct.
To get into the Veterans Treatment Court.
Exactly.
What benefit is it for the veteran to get into Veterans Treatment Court as opposed to just being in the regular criminal justice system?
There's a direct and an indirect benefit. The direct benefit would be if they successfully complete our 12 to 18-month program, if their charge was a misdemeanor, it'll be dismissed when they're done. If their charge was a felony, it will be reduced to a misdemeanor. So it gives them more of a future. It's hard to get a job or do anything with a felony on your record. The indirect benefit is the treatment they receive that gets them healthy again so they don't commit more crimes in the future, and so that they can continue being a contributing member of society, have a job, pay taxes, and take care of their family.
All right. So if someone applies, what criteria is there other than that he or she is a veteran?
There has to be a nexus, a connection between the trauma they experienced and why they're in trouble now. I can give you an example. We had a sergeant who served in Iraq who got injured over there. The doctors in the military prescribed him painkillers. For such a long period of time, he became addicted to them. The military then discharged him back to York, Pennsylvania, addicted to prescription painkillers. He got in all sorts of trouble trying to get more painkillers, and he was facing years and years in prison. Essentially, although not intentionally, the Army had turned him into a drug addict. That was clearly a connection there where this soldier needed help, not jail time, so he could get back to being the successful person he was before.
Now, who makes the determination of whether or not he qualifies to be in the program?
Really, three role players. First, probation screens them. Secondly, the district attorney then plays a role in determining whether the type of offense is such that it's appropriate. And finally, I, as the judge, make the final decision.
And so if someone qualifies to be in the program, what do they have to do?
When they come into the program, first of all, they report to me every week so I can check on how they're doing.
Now, there's a set time for this treatment court.
Yep, exactly. It's 9 a.m. Monday mornings. They report to me. Their real work is done outside of the court. They're very busy. We put a lot of obligations on them. They're going to counseling. They're going to AA meetings. They're going to Narcotics Anonymous meetings, if that's their problem. They're going
so the treatment is individualized to what they need.
Exactly. And they're going to group counseling at the Vet Center in East York, where they can sit down with a counselor and other veterans with similar problems and share their thoughts and help each other get better. They go to the VA in Lebanon and are reviewed by psychologists and psychiatrists up there, and they have some unique treatment methods.
And I want to point out, you mentioned both the VA in Lebanon as well as the Vet Center in East York. These are organizations tailored for veterans, correct?
Exactly. And
as opposed to the treatment court where they might be sent to counselors or therapists or psychologists. Here they're being sent to centers that specialize with veterans. And why is that important?
Because we've learned the science is that the soldiers have unique issues. Most civilians have not encountered being wounded, having to take somebody else's life, have somebody die in their arms. And there is treatment for that, for the post-traumatic stress disorder that comes from that if we just used the normal civilian methods of treating, we would be missing the mark, because these issues are unique to the soldiers. They put them through combat simulators and have them talk about their problems while they're in that, and the science has shown that that's very effective. They could not get that treatment in the civilian world.
All right, so now if they're participating in this program, they go to the treatment that's pretty much tailored individually for them. They still continue to meet with you as the judge weekly?
That's right. They come in and see me weekly. I ask them how they're feeling about things, how they're doing with their substance abuse issues, if they have any, what challenges are they facing. It's basically a checkup where I figuratively take their pulse and look them in the eye and figure out, are they doing better or are they doing worse? And one benefit of my own combat experience is I can tell when they're giving me a line of baloney or not. The great thing about soldiers is they're tough. Sometimes they're too tough and they don't admit that they've got problems.
I think one of the things that we've neglected to mention is that in order to be in the program, in addition to being screened and everything else we talked about, is the defendant actually has to admit guilt. Is that?
That's correct. You got to be up front. They figuratively have to fall on their sword, admit their wrongdoing, and if they do that, then they come into the treatment court and get the benefits.
So if someone is arrested for a crime where they're maintaining they're innocent, they would not qualify to go into veterans court as sort of a compromise or something like that.
That's correct. Yeah, they have to admit their guilt, and we also have to.
I'm going to cut you off right here. We'll be back in a few minutes. This is Legal Lines. Welcome back to Legal Lines. My name is Tom O'Shea, the host of this program, and I have a special guest today, Judge Craig Trebilcock from the Court of Common Pleas of York County, where we are talking about Veterans Treatment Court. Now, before the break, we were talking about the program. Basically, a veteran is accused of a crime. In order to get into the program, the veteran would need to plead guilty. he is screened, he or she is screened as to whether or not the problem could be related to something that occurred in the military
Right.
or during military service. And if that's the case, rather than just punish the person, we try to treat them for the underlying causes of what caused the problem.
Exactly.
Okay, I hope I summarized that.
No, that's right on point.
One of the things you pointed out to me during the break, which I was not aware of, is that if there's a victim to the crime, that the victim has some say in whether or not the person is eligible for this program.
Absolutely. I mean, the primary role of the court and the district attorney's office is to protect the public. And let's say, for want of a better example, somebody gets punched in the nose and they have a broken nose. If they object to the veteran coming into the Veterans Court, we're going to take that into serious consideration. It's not meant to be a court of favoritism. It's meant to be a court of justice. And we also have to consider the views of the victim in making this decision.
Okay, so the victim has a lot of input, but not necessarily the final say.
That's true.
Okay.
That's true.
And now we're back where someone is in the program. There's an individualized treatment program. They have to report to you as the judge monitoring this once a week.
Right.
Now, as time, how long typically will someone be in the program?
About 12 to 18 months, depending on how quickly they progress. Without getting in the weeds too much, we have 3 phases. In the first phase, they see me every week. When I think they've made sufficient progress on whatever their underlying issue is, it becomes every other week. And then after a period of time, if they're continuing to make progress, not doing what got them in trouble anymore, then they go to phase 3. They see me once a month. So gradually releasing the reins.
Okay, and at the end of the program, what happens?
End of the program, they graduate. They get the charge reduction that we mentioned earlier, and hopefully we've rehabilitated a young hero and put them back out in the community where they can be with their family and be successful.
One of the other things that I know that exists in the program is there are mentors.
Right.
Can you talk about the mentors?
Sure. It's a key component of the court. I always say that the things that make soldiers good soldiers make them lousy civilians. And that is, when you're in the military, you don't admit weakness. You adopt the attitude you can overcome anything. You don't need help. And that's okay when you're in a combat situation. It helps keep you alive. Back in the civilian world, though, when you have these memories haunting you, maybe nightmares, flashbacks, that becomes denial. And then a person gets worse, not better, by just trying to pretend they don't have a problem. The mentors, for want of a better term, we call them like the battle buddy. It's the guy who looks out for you. They're not there to be counselors. They're there to be the friend to the veteran. And the mentors are themselves veterans. Many of them are combat veterans. And so when the soldier's having a real bad day, soldier, airman, Marine, Navy, whatever, they may not want to share with their wife that they're having bad feelings because, something horrible happened to them overseas. But they can pick up the phone or meet the mentor and talk it out.
I want to point out all of the mentors are volunteers?
Yes, they're all volunteers. They're headed up by Barry Shep, who's a Navy veteran himself, and is consistent with the York community. The generosity of these folks with their time for the veterans has been incredible.
And do they accompany the person to the treatment court as well as other the counseling, et cetera?
They don't have to, but the amazing thing I've seen is all the mentors are there almost every week. They want to be there to support their person. They're also there at the end of the phone, if it's the middle of the night or something of that nature. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they're very involved.
And they all are veterans themselves?
That's correct.
Okay. And now, I think we covered in the first act, if someone, once they graduate, the crime is reduced. If it's a misdemeanor, it's reduced to nothing. If it's a felony, it's reduced to a misdemeanor.
Right.
Okay. Now, there is a benefit to that, obviously. Is someone with a long criminal record eligible for the treatment court?
Well, in theory, yes, that's not an exclusionary factor, but in practice, it doesn't happen because they wouldn't have gotten in the military in the first place if they had a long criminal record. Now, to use that example of that sergeant we were talking about who became addicted to drugs, he had a long record in a very short time, in that when he came back from Iraq, he was wanted in about 5 different counties for getting prescription drugs illicitly. So it's not just the length of the record. We look at why they're doing it. If somebody was, let's say, a career criminal before somehow they got into the military, we're not going to bring them into veterans court because they were essentially a bad person before they ever went in the military.
But I think one of the things that you told me before we began the taping today is that these are not all recent veterans from Iraq or from Afghanistan, that some go back as far as Vietnam.
That's a good point. I think we have about 5 guys now who are from Vietnam or the Vietnam era, and they would be eligible to come in. None of my 5 from the Vietnam era have long records, but what they may have is long-term consequences of the war, like they've been drinking for 30 or 40 years, or maybe unable to hold down a job, or they've had multiple divorces. Basically, the Vietnam War trashed their life at some level, and now that they're older and we're seeing a lot of them are retiring, the problems seem to be boiling to the surface at this late date.
Right. So, and they would still be eligible for the benefits of the Veterans Treatment Court.
Yep, absolutely. It's not limited to Iraq and Afghanistan. We've got guys from the first Gulf War, and anybody could come in.
Now, we also talked about the fact that there are mentors, and they're citizens in the community who are volunteering to help.
Yep.
What can other citizens in the community do to help with this program?
Well, one of the biggest challenges I've noticed in the past year is these military veterans are very focused, very results-oriented. They want to accomplish whatever task is put in front of them. Even though they've gotten into trouble with the law, they have a lot of pride, and they have a lot of leadership skills. And when they're just sitting at home in the basement playing Call of Duty or watching daytime TV, it tends to contribute to their getting into trouble. They get depressed like anybody else would. We need jobs for these veterans. People in the community who have connections. I mean, these guys will, doesn't matter what they were in the military, they'll sweep floors, they'll pull weeds, they'll do whatever they can, because we're trying to give them that foundation to rebuild the pride and success they had when they were in the military. So sometimes it's difficult for returning vets generally to get a job, but when you come back and you've got a charge on your record, even while you're in Veterans Court, they have the conviction on the record. We need HR folks and company owners who are willing to say, you know what, I'm willing to take a risk on this guy. If he's in the Veterans Court, he's got something going for him.
And is there anything within the program that assists with this?
There's assistance with the Veterans Court through the VA and our local county Veterans Office to help them develop resumes, to do vocational rehabilitation, develop new skills. But the one thing that the court isn't, although we try to help when we can, is a job placement service.
Right, you can't be placing the jobs themselves, but the programs that you make the participants attend have programs that do assist with job placement.
Exactly, and if anybody is interested in helping to give veterans a job, they can just drop a letter to me at the courthouse. I'll get it in the hands of the people who can help out, which would be the mentors, and we'd certainly appreciate that.
Okay. How's the program going now?
It's going very well. We have 16 people in right now, 16 veterans. We have another 10 whose applications are pending. I'm seeing the change in these veterans on a weekly basis. I've got guys who, when they first came into the program a year ago, were basically an emotional train wreck, families breaking up, very flat, as the professionals would say, flat affect, non-smiling, wound so tightly, it was incredible. And in the year, I've seen these guys come to the realization that they need help and that they've embraced the program and they're getting better, and the counselors reflect they're getting better. So it's being the success that we've seen elsewhere. There's other counties and states that have veterans courts, and we're seeing the same success here in York.
Well, how long has the whole concept of veterans court been in place?
It's been about 4 years.
So it's not really that old.
No, started in Buffalo, New York, and I think right now, give or take a couple, there's about 200 veterans courts in the country. A year and change ago, there was only 50. So these courts and the communities, county commissioners are supporting this. Not only patriotic, but it's saving a lot of tax dollars.
Yeah, how does it save tax dollars?
Well, what we found is to treat the veteran costs about $1 for every $3 we'd spend on incarceration. Specifically, if it takes about $33,000 to lock somebody up for a year, we can get them healthy on about $11,000. And then instead of just the money going into the black hole of incarceration, it's really an investment, because once we get the veteran back on their feet, they're working, they're paying on their house, they're contributing to the tax base. We don't have families that are being split apart in single-family households. So there's a lot of payback that comes with it that's not even monetary.
Well, just in general, I mean, we know that there is success through the other treatment courts.
Absolutely, and we're following in the path of that same model.
And I think, as you pointed out before, you're following that model, but this is specially geared toward veterans because of the unique problems that they may face.
Exactly.
Okay, because of what they've witnessed or experienced while in the military.
Exactly.
Okay, so York County has such a program. About how many counties in Pennsylvania now have this program?
I think we have about 10. I couldn't name them all, but Philly and Pittsburgh were kind of the first ones. And then people in central Pennsylvania are very patriotic. So right around York, there's several others. Lancaster has one, for example.
Okay. And has anybody monitored the success rate for those?
A lot of those are so young we don't have meaningful statistics yet. Mm-hmm. But Philly and Pittsburgh have been around. They're being very successful.
So with ours being only a year old and the general program lasting 18 months, as a practical matter, there have not yet been people who've gone through the whole program. Is that correct? That's
right. Some of them are doing so well that they may graduate at the 12-month mark, which will be over the next few weeks.
Okay. And I want to point out that this is available, obviously it needs to be available for both female as well as male veterans.
Absolutely. We also have female mentors for the female veterans. And these days, women are in combat, just like the men have the same experiences.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. We're almost out of time. I want to thank my guest today. It's Judge Craig Trebilcock, not only a judge for the Court of Common Pleas of York County, but also a colonel in the United States Army Reserves. Thank you very much for being here. This is Legal Lines, brought to you by the York County Bar Foundation. Thank you.